a sense of community when you're free. Rolling through the mountains, rolling through the valley, rolling through paradise with me.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining in the show. Today, my guest is from Ontario. He is an actor, a musician, and an activist. Time to meet Sandy Crawley. Welcome to the show, Sandy.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here.
Well, I'm pleased that you accepted it. So you have those three things going for you. So what came first, musician or acting, or was it simultaneous?
Well, I guess I'd have to say acting. My parents were filmmakers, and one of their early, they were mainly documentary filmmakers. They did do some dramatic work too, but one of their early successes was a whole series on child development, and they used their own children. So I was in front of the camera at 2 months, but I didn't really get the bug until I was about 8 or so. I got to do a piece in summer theater, some melodrama out here, just in Kingsmere. I'm actually up in rural Quebec now. And I just fell in love with it. I mean, I guess I'm a ham, whatever. But then at 13 at puberty, I discovered rock and roll. Well, actually folk music first. Pete Seeger was my huge hero. I met him when I was 12. And the power of getting a room full of people singing together was completely seductive. And then, of course, rock and roll came along. I discovered Ray Charles and the Beatles and stuff. So I had the teenage band, with some rather remarkable partners who stuck with that difficult business really more than I have. Like Bruce Coburn I had a duo with Bruce when I was 15.
Nice.
He was my accompanist, which is funny to think of. And then later on, we had another band, a little Ottawa band. It was only 3 years, but we made our mark. We had Sneezy Waters in the band. I don't know if you know Sneezy's work. Neville Wellesley's, I guess they're more Ontario local guys. But anyway, so, experienced the heady world of rock and roll and opening for all the big acts, and we opened for the Rolling Stones, shared a dressing room with them in '63 and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so then at 20, and I was still sticking with music, but a dear friend got me a job in theater in which I needed to be able to sing. And then I was back on stage, and I thought, oh, this is good. I like this. I don't have to make up the words. Somebody else tells me what to say. So then I adore the theater. I've worked in film and television too, but I really love the theater. I'm starting another job next Tuesday, and it's never too late. That's what I love about the theater.
Yeah, hello. I started everything later in life, so I totally agree with that.
Yeah. The anecdote I love is the guy in Chicago who worked at the Goodman, and he left his skull to the Goodman Theater in Chicago, so he occasionally still gets to play Yorick every few years, Hamlet. I like that.
Yeah. Did you say you're now living in rural Quebec?
Oh, I'm visiting. I'm staying with my sister. She's got a real health affliction, so whenever I'm free, I'm coming up here and giving her some primary care. So, but it's the little village where I grew up, just outside Ottawa.
Very nice.
Old Chelsea, Quebec.
Oh, okay, yeah. So now it also says on your Facebook profile that you're an activist.
Well, yeah. I mean, I took on some political roles. Just as an actor, I was the president of ACTRA for a number of years, and I'm kind of a political junkie. I grew up here in Ottawa, and I used to go and see and we had some really articulate leaders like Trudeau Père and Bob Stanfield and Bob Ray and Ed Broadbent. We'd have really good discussions in the House, and I used to go to the House and sit in the gallery, and I was inspired by I find it fascinating, the whole aspect of the way we use political power and so on. So I'm a political junkie. So sure enough, I tend to identify with causes that I think are important. And now with grandchildren and so on, I look at the climate thing. I mean, my mother was really a pioneer in that stuff, and she started talking to us about the Club of Rome and so on, back in the 70s, and reading Rachel Carson and stuff. So I worked through some of the mainstream political parties. I thought there was some hope, but recently I just got engaged with the Green Party because they seem to have more of a focus on what I think is our most critical challenge, which is, you certainly know about in BC, and we're learning about it everywhere
I follow politics a little bit. I get people say things that's just drive me a little crazy. Like they'll say they won't vote for, say, the Green Party because they think it's a wasted vote. And I'm thinking, well, as long as you vote for the major parties, they think they're doing something right. It's conservative, liberal, like back and forth, like nothing will change, right?
Yeah, exactly. The example here, because I live in Ontario, I live in Hamilton, Ontario, and we've got one member, but he is acknowledged to be the most effective opposition, which is Mike Schreiner, who's the leader of the Green Party of Ontario. And he's really paid his dues. I mean, he's been at it for 13 years, and he's only 5 or 6 or whatever. So I ran for them provincially in Hamilton. I ran against Andrea Horvath, who was the leader of the NDP, like in Kitchener, Hamilton Center. I knew I wasn't going to win, but we improved the vote. We improved the vote considerably, to the point where now the provincial party has to subsidize the riding, and another young woman who was working with me ran subsequently. She didn't do quite so well, but it was a by-election. Right. But I think it's worth it. I've supported some people, not necessarily by party, but because I respected their leadership. I really got engaged with Sheila Copps, for instance, who's from Hamilton, when she was in culture and I was the president of ACTRA. We had a chance to really get to know each other. And I think, there's a reward in this work. And running as a candidate actually is kind of interesting. I mean, I knew I wasn't going to win. I didn't have any money, didn't spend my own money a little bit. Yeah. But, you meet people, and you have some really good conversations, and it's good to feel engaged. Somebody, I don't know who said it, I guess it's ancient wisdom, is like, there's nothing that can, relieve your depression or cynicism or whatever more than taking action, right? So take some action, people, you'll feel better.
Yeah, I agree with you. Too many people are, I don't know, they say, oh, well, nothing I can do, but that's so wrong. It's the wrong way of thinking, in my opinion, right? Apathy
is the worst. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Even if you're volunteering, I volunteered at, gosh, I can't even remember which party it was. So now it was so long ago, but it was just to learn what happens behind the scenes, stuff you don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it was interesting. I have a dear friend who's one of Sheila's really good friends, Isabel Metcalf, who's really, like, she's in the Liberal Party up to here, like she was Bob Ray's campaign manager when he ran for the leadership, and she was married to the chief bagman of the party, right, who was actually managing another rivals. Anyway, she gave me some great advice. She gave me some money when I was running, and she said, make sure you get to know the other candidates, the other parties, because you actually have more in common with them than with anyone. And it's true. I mean, you've got to respect people, even if you disagree with them.
Yes.
You got to respect that they are at least engaged. They think that, public service is an important role. And unfortunately, I think, I'm disappointed in the quality of leadership we've got right now, but it comes and goes, Right. I think they speak highly of me, but I'm
very good then. One thing I don't like during the election time is when they start bad-mouthing each other. I think that is so unnecessary. Don't tell me what they're doing wrong. Tell me what you're going to do.
Yeah, and criticize based on policy and substance. Yeah, the personal attacks are really disappointing. I mean,
yeah, they are. Yeah. And it's hopefully it'll swing back to where they're not doing that so much, but it's up to the voters. So. I mean, if people will keep voting on those premises, it gives them the again, like I think the politicians think, well, okay, I'm doing the right thing because they're voting me in. So, you have to give people a reason to change, I believe.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's certain things, if we could do some term limits, it might be good,
Yeah.
People get in a rut. And
let's get out of politics. Let's get out of politics and get back into acting. So you said you got coming up next week?
Yeah, it's a wonderful little play. you might know of called Once. It's been on Broadway. It's a musical play. It's not a musical so much. I guess you could call it a musical, but it's more of a play with music, because the premise of the play is that there's this young Irish street singer. I think we're in Dublin or Belfast. I haven't read my script that carefully, but I'm playing his father. And my character runs a repair shop for instruments, and there's a Czech musician. They're both busking on the streets, who comes in with her instrument to be repaired, and there's a spark between the two young people, and so he insists that I try and fix her thing for nothing or whatever. What? Anyway, it's a love story, and I think they come off to North America and achieve some kind of success.
Right.
But and it's a new movement in theater, and I've done a few things this way now. It's called musicians, where all the actors are also musicians and maybe even dancers, so that the whole cast is playing. I'm playing 3-stringed instruments in this show, and
Nice, yeah.
so I guess we're on stage, and the thing is staged in such a way that it kind of, that's the conceit. You play the music, you provide the accompaniment for your own singing and everything. I think it's fun for an audience.
Yeah,
it's got the aspects of a concert, and there's a story being told.
Right. Yeah. That sounds wonderful. That really does. I used to volunteer at our culture center for a lot of the plays, and it always fun to be there, to watch what's going on, to be right in the audience and hear everything. Right.
Oh yeah, it's magic. I fell in love with it. I went to a camp for the kids of culture vultures when I was a kid, and we did acting and dancing and singing and stuff. And then I started what they used to call pulling hemp. I went to the Ottawa Little Theater, and my job was just to open and close the curtain. That's when I fell in love with the theater. I just noticed the magic of it, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I've been on stage. It was fun, mostly in the vagina monologues, but it was still fun.
That's a great piece.
Yeah. Oh, listen, they gave me one of those parts, I tell you. It was really interesting, but I enjoyed it very much.
And where did you do that? At the Couch?
It was in Mission, BC.
Oh, Mission, yeah. Is that where you are?
I'm in Chilliwack.
Oh, Chilliwack, yeah. Oh, great.
Yeah. Was
another great Canadian musical act.
Pardon?
Said another great Canadian musical act.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, the first time I did it was here in Chilliwack, but then mostly was in Mission and in Vancouver, different places. So it was so much fun. I really enjoyed it. But the first time, people that were putting it on moved over to one of the islands somewhere, and that changed things for me. I don't drive anymore, so it's getting back and forth on the ferry just made it a little bit difficult. But anyway, it doesn't matter. I did other things, so who cares? Move on to
yeah. Oh no, yeah. No, that's great. The tourist show is fun too.
Yeah.
I find that really interesting. Maybe the best theater job I've had to date. Ran for 3 years, over like a 3-month period every year, and it was adapted from a book called 10 Lost Years, which was by a Canadian journalist who Barry Broadfoot. It was all stories from the Depression.
Okay.
Real stories from people had told him. He recorded. He went across the train. He went across, the wonderful train trip across Canada, I think 4 times. And he would get off and on and meet people and just talk to people, and they'd lead to someone else. And I think he ended up editing down thousands of stories into 400 stories in his book, which is the same title, 10 Lost Years. And he very artfully, I don't know if it was he or an editor, removed all the proper names. Okay. So all it was people telling their stories. And then the brilliant George Luscombe, who's alas no longer with us, with Toronto Workshop Productions, adapted it into a 2-hour show, again with music. And it was such a success. It beat all the records in Toronto for a number of weeks that it ran, for a locally produced show, not Cats or something. And then we toured all of Canada with it. 55 cities we played. I didn't even know we had 55 cities at the time. This is like back in the 70s. And then we took it to Europe. We took it to Britain and Wales and Holland. And so, I mean, what a job, you know? And it's just this wonderful storytelling. And it was so moving. George's thing, we used to say, stop acting, you know, he wanted you to be real. And sometimes we'd play it in a town in Canada, and people were so moved because they had lived through this thing. It was the 70s, so lots of people still remember the Depression. And sometimes we'd stop talking and someone in the audience would jump up and start telling their story.
Oh,
or we'd go after. It was wonderfully produced because there was a guy named Sergei Soshman who organized the tour, at least the Western tour. And then we were always being sponsored and presented by some local group, a church or a ladies' auxiliary or something. So we'd always have these receptions afterwards. And you'd go and you'd hear stories that were as exciting or more than the ones you just told on stage, you know?
Yeah.
And it was just remarkable. And also the change, you know, we have such a diverse country. Like we played Newfoundland, and it was a bit cooler there because they weren't part of Canada during the Depression. We didn't, you know. But I mean, you'd tell the story of the terrible dust storms on the prairies in Ontario, and people would be crying. And you'd tell it out on the prairies, and they'd be laughing because they lived through it, you know.
Right. Yeah.
And it was really, you know, and so touring. I'm glad to hear you got to tour a show like that, because it's interesting. You get the different audiences. You really get a sense of a different community. You know?
Absolutely, it's so much fun. You know, I would have liked to have done like when I got into improv, and I always hoped we would be doing some touring with the improv team, but you know, unfortunately, it didn't happen. And COVID hit, and that changed everything. Of course.
Oh my God, did it ever? Oh, did it ever? But yeah, now you're brave. You're a brave person, Nancy Guitar, because improv is the scariest thing there is. You know?
Well, I did some stand up, and then improv was so much.
Wow. Well, that's also requires great courage.
Well, as improv was easier because I didn't have to remember any lines. It was
there is that, and then you have partners.
Yeah, you're working off of other people, and it was just so much fun to do it. You know.
Oh, I'm deep. I admire it so deeply, but it's not something that comes that easily to me. I like it when I have the story there to tell. I mean, I do it musically. I improvise and stuff, yeah. But yeah, no. As far as theater goes, I think it's the hardest, along with clown. You know, unspoken clown, which is also extremely challenging. You know,
things. Yeah, when you see other people doing, you think, oh my gosh, I could never do that. Right.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting, you know, but it's kind of neat that you get to do, like, you get to do your acting and music at the same time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Not
no, it really is satisfying, man.
Yeah. So
you know, I've been playing so long. My mother taught me the ukulele when I was 8, and that was over 60 years ago almost. You go through these stages as a musician, you know. Especially, I mean, I learned by ear, and I'm not a hugely well schooled, but you get to a point of ease, and I think music is the best language that human beings have invented. Frankly,
yeah.
I think creativity is our greatest gift as a species. I think art is more important than science or religion or anything else. For me, it has more meaning. Mm-hmm. But music, I found, like, even, you know, at the age of 50, having played for that many years, that then there was a certain ease that came, and the pressure is off, and you're not trying to replicate something that you've done before. You really are reinventing. Like, it's a jazz attitude towards music, and I think the best musicians in all genres have that attitude. It's like, no, there's no other time. It's just the now, right?
Yeah.
And, it's so exciting. But yeah, to combine that with theater is it's made a good career for me. I mean, not that I'm a rich man or anything, but a satisfying career. Yeah.
Well, that's what you need, right? To do something you really enjoy. I mean, that's the bonus.
Absolutely.
And music, I like to say, and I'm sure other people have said it feeds our soul.
That's it. That's exactly it.
Are you still now with music? Are you still also doing in a band at the same time as well?
Yeah, well, not in bands so much. I do a little solo work.
Okay.
But mainly, I've got some. Come on in. Sorry, I didn't.
It's all part of this, and it's no problem. I don't mind at all.
Okay, yeah, you can always edit. Hi.
No, don't ask me that. I don't edit.
Mike. Oh, hi. I'm sorry. I'm just online in an interview. But were you here to see Jenny?
Yeah.
Go ahead in.
Okay.
Sorry.
Hi, Mike. I don't edit, by the way. So this is going to be in the interview.
Oh, okay. Well, it's real life. Yeah, the most satisfying thing I have is I have two grown sons who have somehow been infected by my love of music, and especially all kinds of material, but folk songs and traditional blues and stuff. So they have developed, they've learned a lot of my repertoire and developed their own repertoire. So at least once a year, and we just did it last week, we have a couple of gigs at an outdoor. A friend of one of my sons, Jonas's friend, has one of these mini breweries, and he grows his own hops and stuff, and he's got a stage set up. So all summer long he has acts come in. So we get a couple of gigs a year there. And so I do it with my sons. And in the last year, one of my grandsons is also showing some real musical ability. So we had 3 generations on the stage there last week. It was really fun. And we make a little bit of money. Like, we pass that jug and he gives us a little honorarium kind of thing. So it's quite satisfying, especially, handing my grandson, here's your $50 from the tips, oh, that's better than last week. It was 24, So I hope I haven't encouraged him too much to go into a business that's so hard, but it is, as you said, Nancy, it's the work itself. It's the music you play. It's a horrible business, but the actual execution of the art form is its own reward.
Yeah.
And if you can manage to get paid for it, so much the better.
Right. Yeah. Recently, like in May, I turned 75. So I had a party and I invited some of my musician friends. So to have them there, like I've interviewed them, I've heard their music, but to have them there performing, oh, it's so fantastic,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It was just so marvelous. And again, and I also had an Indigenous friend come and play the drums, and it's just like, oh, wow. All those different styles of music, it just gives us so much, right?
Yeah, that's why music. That's why I'm sure it's our best language, because it cuts across cultural boundaries too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well,
my little grandson, they went to that little family went to Ireland for a wedding a few weeks ago, and he came back with a boran, the drum. It's kind of like our Indigenous drums, it's the fat round drum, and you play it like with the mallet like that. And he was playing it on stage with us last week, playing the Irish drum along with us. So yeah, no, I know what you mean. Musical friends are the best.
Yeah, for sure.
Some of my dearest friends are people that I perform music with, and there's a bond that is like no other.
And I've met so many musicians that are so generous with, and I mean that by like with stage time or like they welcome everybody. They don't, they're not jealous of somebody else's performance and stuff like that. And that's what I like to see. Whatever you're doing, it's like people tell me they want to start a show like I do, and they said, well, I don't want to step on your toes. You're not. You're doing something. You're not me. You're going to be you, and you do it your way. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. There's room for all of us. That's my thought.
Well, especially in this digital age. I mean, despite the downside of the way the whole digital economy is unfolding, you can't complain about the real estate. There's room for everybody, like you said.
Absolutely. So anyway, I think we're going to run out of time, so I better end it there. But
sure.
Just stay on camera for a second, okay? So I just want to remind everybody you've listened to Sandy Crawley, who's in Ontario. Hamilton, Ontario. And I hope you enjoyed this interview, and I hope you share and continue watching the show. Take care, everybody.
Very much, and I'll spread the word so you'll have more. You'll have more fans.
Yay!
In Canada and around the world.
Thank you for that, and thank you everybody for watching. Peace out, everyone.
A sense of community till the wax a place to be. A sense of community when you're free. Rolling through the mountains, rolling through the valley, rolling through paradise with me. It's multicultural, you're sure to see it all. Chilliwack's the place to be, you'll see. Come party in the park, go dancing after dark. Chilliwack's the place to be, you'll see.